You know, it gets late. It's interesting after a long day. There's so many things I want to talk about. I want to get on camera or record and offer up to you. But what often happens is by the time I get there, I've had so many distractions that my mind is kind of defocused. So, I hope that this evening I can actually focus things to the point where I can actually get something out that makes a lot of sense, in some form at least. So I may be this first part may just be me trying to get on track somehow and figure out you know how I can dial that in. But thinking about how much as a child everything around me, everything I observed, was like a sponge. And I'm still kind of that way. But it's interesting how we play things out. And a lot of times don't even realize that when we were children, how we were, in a sense, laying the groundwork, or it was being laid for us, so that down the line we would be able to walk into whatever it is that our role was going to be in life, and our focus and our passion and using our gifts and talents and all those things. So there's a definitive connection to dreaming, being thinking about things and being creative. When you're a child, you don't have the kind of programmed risk aversion that adults do. You just kind of, it's all new, and it's all, it's like, to you, it's, it's all mix and match, and you can play, There's a good thing about that. You're learning how things work. You're figuring out how things work, and you're having fun. And, I saw this child earlier today, and young kid, and he was just barreling down the street on a bicycle and making a noise that made it sound like, he was on a motorcycle, and he was probably, I don't know, maybe 8 years old, maybe. And just having a ball. And you could tell that he had this affinity towards motorcycles and loved them so much that, he was pretending he was playing. Now, I hadn't seen a child in the neighborhood, right, just play like that here in Richmond, in the city, in a long time. It was refreshing to see, not a care in the world, childlike, having fun, not worried about all the chaos going on in the world, and just having a good time pretending to be on a motorcycle. So, when you think about that, isn't that what most people spend the rest of their lives once they become an adult trying to get back to? That sense of wonderment, that sense of excitement, carefree, no stress, how often do we hear work hard, play hard, right? Why do you think that is? What do you think in us is driving us back and pointing us back to that childlikeness? Why do you think that is? As I've said before, when I'm under a lot of stress, or I'm down, or I'm frustrated, I have a kind of a fail-safe cycle. And what I do is I go back to things that I enjoyed when I was a kid, in terms of certain things that kind of inspired me, right? And I kind of revisit that place in my mind, gives me a break from all the other stuff. Now, I love being able to apply that to other stuff, right? There's a beauty in childlikeness. There's a creativity and a freedom in childlikeness that at once, as adults, we are both desirous of and fearful of what others might think if we are childlike. Well, they might take advantage of you. What would others think? I mean, you often hear people, that see that childlikeness in others say things like, stop being childish. Actually, they're the ones being childish because they have strangled the childlikeness in themselves or outright executed it over their lives or imprisoned it within themselves. And so they can't stand to see it in others. Why do you think that is? You don't see in childlikeness the divisions and the hatred and the jealousy and the bitterness like you see in childishness at any age, including those who are old, those who are middle-aged, and young adults. Well, think about that. Now, think about what happens to people as they grow up and go through life. Something changes them. Something mutates. Something forces them into a lie. What do you think that is? Something changes you as you go through society in your life far too often. Now, I want you to apply that and look at how organizations, companies, how governments function. How often do you hear older civilizations looking down on younger ones? I mean, you can see that right now. I mean, America is very childlike in some respects and quite childlike or quite childish in others. Isn't that how you learn? But yet, it's interesting how older civilizations that have lost their power, prestige, and position love to actually put others that come after them down. Now look at how China looks down on us. And let's be frank about it. How most of Europe looks down on America. And the Middle East, for that matter. Why do you think that is? Look, as it is for people, so too it is for nations. And much more depth than you might want to realize. I see a society that has become fearful, that is too concerned about what others think, and has become, in many cases, an jailer, a prison warden over childlikeness, while elevating childishness. And that says a lot about those who've gotten into positions of power and have done really well and made lots of money See, how do you get that influence and that power? Well, wealth, right? Success, as determined by others who in many cases executed or jailed their own childlikeness. And then we wonder why so many people, it's almost like it's like a reality show that doesn't have a lot of reality to it. But why do you think it is so many people are so obsessed with celebrity? The rich, powerful, right? The rich, the powerful, the famous, the lives of them. And why do you suppose it is that so many of the folks that have the most are so poverty-stricken in terms of happiness, and they're chained to the expectations of those that are like them, right? Wealthy, powerful, influential, because it comes with all of these strings attached, all of these expectations, right? Where do you think that comes from? Does anybody ask why? Oh no, because that's childlike. See what I mean? They enslave you and would rather you be in childishness than childlikeness, because you can be controlled. And it allows them to continue being childish. And that points you towards a much more insidious problem, one that is evil, one that is built in pride, and one that is fake. It's not authentic. It's not real. But yet it demands you bend a knee to its wishes because, well, if you're going to keep your power, your prestige, and your wealth, I mean, you've got to do the right things. In a way, it's a cult. It's a religion. It has all the earmarks of occultic religion. Inordinate amounts of arbitrary rules and expectations. Yet, doesn't want you to question. Doesn't want you to ask simple things. How often growing up did you hear, well, it's just that way because it is? It's always been that way. It's just what you have to do. Right? How many times have you worked your tail off and somebody has put you down or plundered you, right? And said things to you like, well, you just got to learn to pay your dues. You know what they're doing, right? If you protest against it, they say you're entitled, right? They're flipping things on you. They're the ones that are actually entitled in a negative sense because they're plundering you. And they're silencing you and making you not only be plundered, but feel bad if you question it because clearly you don't know their rules. Now, their rules may change on a daily basis. They're always polymorphic because it's not about the rules, it's about your being controlled. It's all about being controlled. You being controlled. And because they gave into it, their expectations are that they're entitled to do the same thing to you that was done to them, right? And they bent a knee to a lie, and they expect you to do the same thing too. Because if you don't, right? If you buck against the trend, if you rock the boat, if you are a maverick, It exposes the falsity, the fakery, right? The lack of genuineness and authenticity of their own lives, and reminds them of the lie and the compromises that they've made and the complicity thereof that they live in every day. In short, it exposes their insufficiencies, their insecurities, and their own hatreds towards themselves, their bitterness, which they expect you to conform to as they project theirs upon you. Now, what I'm explaining to you is how childlikeness gets put into prison by the childishness of a culture, of a system, right? That's designed to dominate you. Now, what are you seeing in your society? Is it not inverted? Is it not upside down and backwards? Right? But they demand, right? It demands that you bend a knee to its insanity. It demands you bend a knee to its insanity or pay the price. Now that's threat. And if you step out of line, you get accused, slandered, abused, right? If you speak up and protest, you're victimizing them. When the reality is they're the ones being the victimizers. They're duplicitous. They're snakes. They have bought in and are one with their shadow on the ground, which eventually they will go and meet. But think about how they play you. Think about how they manipulate you. Think about how they deceive you and lie to you and con you out of who you are. All in the name of freedom and identity and justice. It's a false paradigm. You see, deception isn't deception if it wasn't deceiving others. It's a lie because it's not true. It's a lie because it's taken the truth out of context, misappropriated, right? Misconstrued, and then misapplies it to mislead you. You don't have to buy into that. In fact, if you do, what you're actually doing is you're being conned into getting in the chains that the people that are holding them out to you are already in themselves. And you're under no obligation to do that. And if they have a problem with that, well, that's them. That's not you. Right? It's not disrespectful to them to not bend a knee to them and worship the ground they walk on. In fact, being complicit with them is codependency, and that's sickness, and it's a form of addiction. It's enslavement. And it's not love because it's not true. It's not honest. You see, the whole thing is designed to keep you from being childlike. But it sure loves when you're childish, right? The whole thing is a mirage, a trap, a lie. So when you look at your country, you look at society around you, you look at the problems that we have, what do you see? Do you see confusion? Do you? How about fear? Pride? Hatred? Unforgiveness? You see those things? How about all the division? Now you know why I don't like the word diversity. Diversity means to divert and or divide or distort. Is that not what we see happening? Is it? That's why I like the word plurality. That is the word that they replaced and put in place of it diversity. Do you know when that occurred in this society and where it came from? University of California, Berkeley, UC Berkeley, in the early 90s. That's how it entered into the common vernacular as you are hearing it every single day, and you feel compelled to put on everything that you do that's public facing. You have been co-opted, schnickered, deceived, and you're being forced to be complicit and compliant. That's a lie. How's it working for you? How's it working for the country? Are we better off? Are we getting problems solved? Are we able to fix our country and work together? No, we're not. We're more broken, we're more divided, we're more diverted, which is exactly what happens when you're being conquered by a lie and deceived. So ask yourself, what does that do to the creativity and critical-minded thinking capabilities of people? Isn't that ruling by fear and confusion over them? Doesn't that harm creativity? Make you risk averse? Less willing to try new things and, speak your mind? And ask questions. Because they really don't want you to ask questions because they don't want to be questioned. Because in their minds, they're the sole sovereign over all things. They're playing God. In fact, God doesn't even mind if you ask questions, but they do. What does that say about them? See how they are murdering childlikeness and replacing it across the 7 spheres of our society with childishness, with confusion, with fear, with threats. That's a domination system. And that is what you're going to have to learn to overcome and stand up to, individually and collectively as a people, if you want to have a nation. Otherwise, they will continue to take, they will continue to demand, they will continue to force you to be complicit and compliant and assume responsibility for everything they refuse to do themselves as they're doing evil to you. Sometimes you have to practice tough love. If you're not willing to do that, then you have to be willing to accept very tough consequences for having not done so. As it is for people, so too it is for nations.